If you are a property investor and you are looking for a place to invest in regional Queensland right now, well, guess what? I've got a special treat for you. I believe there is a boom coming. With the Australian government set to release the first home buyer 5% deposit scheme in October, I'm anticipating a flood of first home buyers to come into the marketplace and prop up many suburbs. And I've identified 6 suburbs I believe first home buyers will flock to, and I'm going to break down in this video exactly why. So if you are an investor looking for a place to invest in 2025, this video is for you because you could potentially come in, get into one of these suburbs before the frenzy begins. You won't want to miss this. Let's dive in. Before I get started, let me quickly introduce myself. My name is Troy Simbasini. I'm the owner and head of research of Life Buyers Agency. Life Buyers Agency will operate on the ground across 6 locations in regional Queensland under these 2 distinct brands here. In central Queensland, we operate under the brand Capricorn Life Buyers Agency, servicing Gladstone, Rockhampton, Mackay, and Bundaberg. And then in North Queensland, we operate under the brand Tropical Life Buyers Agency, servicing Cairns, Townsville, and the surrounding North Queensland region. Now, we're very much across what's going on the ground in all of these locations. So we are able to speak from a combination of local knowledge, but also we're identifying where the trends have been in the past in relation to where first home buyers tend to flock to. And we're going to today reveal some of these suburbs that I think are ready for another boom, and you could potentially capitalize on one of these opportunities. But alternatively, if you are a property buyer and you are potentially struggling with getting this purchase done and you need help, feel free to reach out to me and the team. We specialize in acquisitions in this marketplace and represent buyers exclusively. We do a lot of off-market property, we do a lot of pre-market property, we do a lot of under-market value purchases, and we all round generally try and get you into the best possible suburb, pocket of the suburb, street, and property. So if you want to mitigate some of your investment risk, but at the same time maximize your investment upside, give us a call on that number or reach out to us on one of those websites and book in a call with me and my team. Cheers. Okay, let's jump in and reveal the first suburb I think a lot of first home buyers are going to flock to in regional Queensland. And the first suburb is a suburb called Thabeban, which is located in Bundaberg. Now, for those who are unfamiliar with Bundaberg, Thabeban sits about 5 to 10 minutes from the CBD of Bundaberg on the south side of Bundaberg. Now, it's historically been, I would say, labelled a more lower socioeconomic suburb for the last 20 years. However, we've seen a re-emergence of this suburb really changing its demographic, and we've seen a lot of first home buyers flood into this marketplace over the last 5 years, and it's really changed the suburb from what was historically a lower socioeconomic area to more a middle class first home buyer market. And the reason why that's been the case is because Thabeban has been a very affordable option when compared to some of the other suburbs around the inner east and the inner north of Bundaberg. And you could get great value for money for 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 2-car properties on roughly 600 square meters, brick and tile, that's been built, I would say, maximum 30 years ago. So we've seen a real big uptake in first home buyers come into this market and target those specific properties. And I believe there's going to be another resurgence of first home buyers that will continue to flood into this market to target those same properties, because right now a lot of these same brick and tile properties are sitting between 600 to 700,000, and I think that is still great entry level buying for first home buyers, because under the new first home buyer deposit scheme with the 5% deposit, all you would need is roughly around $30,000 to $35,000 to purchase a property in this market. And I think there's going to be a huge gravitation towards brick and tile homes, and Thabeban have the most properties on offer that are brick and tile that are less than 30 years old in the marketplace of Bundaberg available for purchase. Many of the other suburbs that have similar stock, you'd be looking at paying more than 700,000 or 800,000. So I think there's going to be a flurry of first home buyers coming into Thabeban. So if you are a property investor, I believe there is a great opportunity for you here. Now, if we actually have a look at some of the point in time data, you can actually see that the market is tracking very well so far, but I'm anticipating a huge surge come after October 1st. So we can see here that supply levels are really low, with stock levels sitting at 0.3%. So that's great, roughly only 5 listings right now. There's roughly around 400 people clicking on listings as they become available on domain and realestate.com. Overall, that's not a huge number, and it's actually well below the regional Queensland average. But when you look at roughly 5 properties available for purchase with a market depth of roughly 400, there's still a massive imbalance between supply and demand there, definitely. The median house price roughly sits at around $611,000. And as I said, you can still buy a pretty decent 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom brick home between $600 to $650 right now in the marketplace. And that's where I think a lot of first home buyers will flock to. We can see that over the last 12 months, the marketplace has grown 14%, so it's a market still on the rise. We can see here that the median rents roughly sit around $560,000. Look, you got to look at this on a case-by-case basis, because there's obviously going to be properties that will be generating a lot more. Early this year, I purchased about 4 or 5 properties in Thabeban, and they were all renting above $600 per week. So again, on a case-by-case basis, you'll definitely be able to get more rental returns if you target the right dwellings. You can see the suburb has roughly around 1,300 dwellings, so it's not a big suburb, and there's not a lot earmarked for that sort of south corridor to be developed. I know there's a lot of farmland surrounding it, so just be mindful of, if you are looking to buy in it, just have a look at the development pipeline. From what I am aware of, a lot of the development pipeline is on the Bundaberg East Coast and the Bundaberg East corridor, as opposed to around the Thabeban area. But I know this suburb is going to be in very close proximity to the new Bundaberg Hospital, so I think this particular suburb is really going to be able to piggyback off of a lot of that economic development happening in that immediate area, and that creation of jobs, which will put, I think, downward pressure on rental vacancies, and also put upward pressure on the median house price. We can see here that properties are selling very fast, 11 days on market. So again, if you are looking to buy in this market, you've got to operate with extreme caution and be very quick, because you're coming up against a lot of competition and properties are moving very fast. So be very good with your terms and conditions, and make sure you go on all guns blazing with your best and final offer, because you're likely in this market to be under a lot of competition, and prices are definitely going to be going over list price. So make sure you're following those price trends, and you're having really good conversations with the agent around what this property is likely to sell for. And we can see here that vacancy rate's very low as well, sitting at around 0.2%. So Thabeban, all the data is looking really good for point in time right now. But as I said, with the first home buyer initiative kicking in come October, I'm anticipating this median house price to see a huge spike, and a lot of first home buyers coming in and targeting these relatively new brick homes in this suburb. Okay, moving on to suburb number 2. And this next suburb, it's located in Gladstone, and the suburb is called Glen Eden. Now, Glen Eden sits roughly, what I would say, 15 minutes from the Gladstone CBD, and I would say 15 to 20 minutes from Tannum Sands Beach. Historically a more upper middle class suburb for a very long time, much like the broader Gladstone marketplace. It was a suburb that struggled. If you backdate its track record, like going back sort of the last 15 years, you would have seen the last sort of, I would say, 10 years prior to the last 5, really the market never really done anything. But post-COVID, we've seen a sort of spike in demand, and we've seen Gladstone overall really take a turn, and then suburbs like Glen Eden have risen significantly as a result as well. So similar to what I mentioned about Thabeban, I think a suburb like Glen Eden is going to be a great beneficiary of the first home buyer scheme, the 5% deposit scheme, because again, you could still get into this marketplace and buy relatively decent newer brick homes that are less than 30 years old, brick and tile on 600 plus square meters between 600 and 700,000 and still be located in what many would consider in Gladstone as an upper middle class or blue chip suburb. So it's offering a lot of affordability for people that wouldn't otherwise potentially have this suburb on their radar or could not have afforded. Historically, particularly locals, can now potentially get into this suburb with as little as a $35,000 deposit. So I'm anticipating a big upswing in Glen Eden for the brick and tile 4-bedroom homes that are less than 30 years old. I think there's going to be a flurry of first home buyers come into this marketplace, and I think this median could definitely do double-digit growth again in the next 12 to 24 months. So if we look at Glen Eden right now as well, as I said, it's historically uh, been a rather slow market, but over the last couple of years, it's really taken a turn because Gladstone overall has, and it's been a great beneficiary of that. But we can see here that at this point in time, the market is still very much on the move. Supply looks to be very low, with stock levels sitting at 0.4%, roughly 7 listings. We're looking at about 863 unique clicks per property on realestate.com as well as domain. That's also, I would say, well below the regional Queensland average. And overall, when I look at the data, this suburb sits roughly around 5th in terms of the suburbs with the highest click rates. If you were to rank them from low to high, it's sitting at around 5th overall for Gladstone, which is still pretty good. If we look at its median sitting at $639,000, and as I said, you can still get into this marketplace between 600 to 700,000 and buy a rather nice brick home. And over the last 12 months, it's been a market definitely on the move as well, growing 23%. But despite the growth we've seen in this marketplace, I think it's still very much going to be an affordable market for those first home buyers, and a lot of home buyers who had this suburb on their radar but could never afford it can now afford it with this new initiative. So I think this suburb is likely to do another sort of 23% over the next 12 months. Rents sitting at roughly around $550 per week. Obviously, look at these on a case-by-case basis. Most of the more executive style, newer build brick homes are renting for above $600 per week. So just do your individual due diligence there. In terms of overall suburb size, there's roughly around 1,300 dwellings. So it's not a big suburb sitting on sort of the inner south of Gladstone. It's very much a hilly suburb as well. So just be mindful, most of the properties that you'll be looking at potentially sit on a hill, and majority of those might have retaining walls as well. So just do your due diligence around those individual properties and making sure those retaining walls in particular are in good shape, because that can potentially be something that could come back and be rather costly throughout the life of your investment. Properties are selling very fast as well, roughly 21 days on market. So again, operate with caution in this market, be very fast, come in swinging, because it's a market that's very competitive. And the vacancy rates are very low as well, sitting at around 0.9%. So point in time data for Gladstone is looking really good. Historically, it hasn't done well, but over the last sort of 3 to 4 years, it's been really pumping, and right now it's still pumping, and I'm anticipating come October 1st, a lot of first home buyers will be definitely flooding into this market as well. Okay, the third suburb on my list today is a suburb called Gracemere, and this suburb is located in Rockhampton. Gracemere, you're looking at about a 20-minute commute from the CBD, and it's located more or less southwest of the CBD of Rockhampton, and a pretty independent suburb with roughly around 5,000 dwellings and a population base of around 12,000 residents in that suburb. So it's a pretty big suburb in the grand scheme of things when you look at the Rockhampton property market. Now, historically, Gracemere, it's been a bit of a hit and miss suburb. It was more of a blue collar suburb for, I would say, the last 10 years, and then more or less in the last 3, 4 years, similar to Thabeban in Bundaberg, we've really seen a gentrification change across the marketplace and a lot of first home buyers sweeping in and taking over this suburb. And by and large, that's been largely attributed to number one, affordability, but number two, again, and you can see where I'm going with this video, is that you can buy brick and tile properties less than 30 years old on 600 square meters of land for 600 or between 600 to 700,000, and historically even less over the last couple of years in Gracemere. So that's where we've seen a huge trend of first home buyers flood into this marketplace and take advantage of that affordability and value for money. Because if you look at a lot of the 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom brick homes in Gracemere right now that are available for purchase, if you pick those up and put them into some of the North Rockhampton suburbs like Frenchville and Norman Gardens, those properties will be north of $700,000. And if you even put them on the inner south in suburbs like Wandle or the Range, you're also looking at north of $700,000. So Gracemere, I think, offers a lot of affordability right now, despite it also doing some really big growth numbers over the last couple of years. Like, if you go back 4 years ago, you probably could have bought one of these 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom brick homes in Gracemere for around $300,000, and now most of those properties have doubled. But again, I can see a lot of first home buyers coming into this market purely because even though the market has doubled here, it's still very affordable to buy these brick homes in comparison to what you could get in town in Rockhampton. And Gracemere, it's got a new high school coming in. There's a lot of industry development happening out there, particularly around that industrial precinct, so a lot of job creation. And there's been a lot of public amenity being, I suppose, pumped into that suburb, and it's really become a nice family-orientated market now. So I do see a lot of families, I think, flooding into this market going forward after October the 1st and really jumping on these brick homes, newer bills, and capitalizing on that affordability. Now, if you look at Gracemere right now, it's tracking pretty good still. So supply levels are really low, looking at around 0.2%, which translates to roughly around 12 listings. A lot of eyeballs are on properties as they become available online, roughly 1,300, which is around the regional Queensland average. So that's really good. And I think overall it sits roughly around fourth in terms of benchmarking against all the other suburbs in Rockhampton. So it's a very popular suburb right now. Its median sits at 610,000, but right now you could get like a pretty nice brick home between 600 and 700,000. If you look at what it's done over the last 12 months, done 21% growth. But again, I think despite the growth, it's still a very affordable market for the first home buyers to get in with a roughly around a $35,000 deposit still. Rents are pretty low in this suburb. That's by and large because their owner to renter ratio sits at around 40% in terms of like that's how many properties are owned by investors. So there can be at any given time a lot of rental competition, which has a tendency to drag down those rental medians. So just be mindful of that if you are looking to buy in somewhere like Gracemere. So, you know, if you can target the better properties in the better areas and try and time it where there's very little competition on the marketplace at that given time, then you'll definitely be able to fetch, I would say, around 560 to low 600s per week for rent there. So make sure you do those due diligence. If we look at the dwellings, it's a big suburb, as I said, roughly around 12,000 people. You're looking at about 5,100 dwellings, and it's still expanding as well. There's about 100 new lots going in on the southern corridor as well, built by CJ Gardner Homes and a developer from down south. So there's a pocket of new supply in the pipeline as well. So if you are investing as well, maybe you want to maybe buffer yourself away from that supply pipeline. I try and stay as far north in terms of targeting the better pockets of Gracemere as possible. Like I prefer that pocket around where the shopping centre is on the northern front. So if you stick to those areas, I think you're going to be pretty good. For the most part, properties are selling very fast, looking at about 18 days on market, and the vacancy rate sitting at 0.5% as well. So all the point in time data looks good for Gracemere, but again, I think this market is going to surge ahead after October 1st because a lot of first home buyers are going to come in and target these affordable brick and tile properties because you can't get them anywhere else in Rocky between 600 to 700,000 that is built less than 30 years ago. And I think that's where the first home buyers will gravitate towards. Okay, the next suburb I think first home buyers are going to flock to in regional Queensland is located in Mackay, and this suburb is called Bucasia. Bucasia sits, I would say about 10 to 15 kilometres from the Mackay CBD and about, I would say, 10 kilometres also from the northern beaches of Mackay. Historically, I think a combination of sort of blue collar, middle class suburb, but I think it's been positioned rather well. It's sort of clustered amongst some really nice upper middle class suburbs in Mackay, in Ruleview, Mount Pleasant, and North Mackay, and even sort of rubbing shoulders with Imeo and Glenella as well. So you'd see where I'm going with this video. Bucasia, very much like those other suburbs I've covered off on, still has a lot of really good entry-level buying for brick and tile property homes that are less than 30 years old on roughly 600 square meters of land. And as I said, it's quite advantageous or well located, sort of nested around some really nice suburbs and offers really good value for money in terms of it being located very similar to where all those other suburbs are located. And so it gets the access to the same amenities, same schools, shops, cafes, the beach, etc. But you're looking at Bucasia sort of spending $100,000 to $200,000 less for the same properties as what you'd be able to get in Glenella, Ruleview, or Imeo. So I'm very bullish on Bucasia for properties between 600 to 700,000. After the first home buyer deposit scheme kicks in, I think there's going to be a flurry of them really flooding into this marketplace. And if you actually look at the point in time data as well, it's been tracking really nicely. Like supply is very low and the trend has maintained itself like this for quite some time. So we're looking at 0.4% with roughly around 8 listings. We're looking at about 1,000 clicks per property as they come online. So huge demand there, very low supply, which is the imbalance we want to see for growth. The median house price sits at around 680 right now. The suburb has different quartiles. So you've got the upper quartile of the marketplace where some of the really nice brick homes in the suburb are going for like generally above 700,000, but majority of, I would say, the less superior homes or the lower quartile of the market are selling between 600 to, I would say, 660. So you'd be able to buy a rather nice solid brick home for roughly around that price. And I think that's where a lot of first home buyers will also gravitate towards. Over the last 12 months, it's surged along as well. It's done 19%. Its median rent is around $580 per week. But Mackay, the rental market's crazy there. I reckon it's the best part of 12 to 18 months in front of everywhere else in regional Queensland, with Cairns not too far behind. I would say probably the only other market I would say that's not too far behind Mackay in terms of the rental premiums you could get there right now. But yeah, I've seen 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom brick homes in Bucasia fetch upwards of $700 per week rent. So if you buy the right dwelling in that suburb, don't get me wrong, you'll definitely be able to outperform that median. Dwellings, you're looking at about sort of 2,100 dwellings, so not a huge suburb. Also, like that dwelling amount, I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. Like where Bucasia is kind of on the northwest or northwest? No, not north. I would just say probably north. Yeah, north of the Mackay CBD, but it's kind of surrounded by swampland and wetlands. So there's not too much urban expansion earmarked for that immediate Bucasia suburb. So I can't really see that dwelling amount increasing anytime soon. So that supply pipeline is going to be very grim. But in and around Rural View, there's some last sort of infill developments happening in and around there. Maybe down towards Shoal Point is probably where the majority of the new supply is going to kick in, and even parts of Glen as well going forward. So yeah, pretty tightly held little suburb, which is a good thing, and that's what you want for investment purposes. That element of scarcity. So demand is very strong as well. Things are selling within sort of 8 days. So just be mindful if you are to go out and buy here. Again, you're operating in a highly competitive environment, and those vacancy rates are really solid as well. So yeah, really happy with point in time data for Bucasia. Historically, it's done all right. It's well located, very affordable in comparison to some of its blue chip neighbours, and I think this suburb is going to be a great beneficiary of this first home buyer deposit scheme, and I think a lot of people are going to flock in and try and get their hands on these brick homes between $600,000 and $700,000 here. Moving from central Queensland now, in North Queensland, we have a suburb called Condon, which is located in Townsville. Condon, I would say as a crow flies, roughly 20 minutes from the Townsville CBD, and located on the outer northwest of Townsville itself. Similar to every other suburb I mentioned, I think first home buyers are going to flock to this suburb to get their hands on these newer brick homes between 600 and 700,000. In fact, in the last month, I bought 3 properties in this suburb for property investors, and they've all been around that $600,000, 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom brick homes that I think is really good value for money in comparison to Bowley Plains, in comparison to Douglas and Annandale, in comparison to Bushland Beach, in comparison to even parts of Kerwin and Mount Louisa. Condon offers great value for money for those brick and tile homes that are less than 30 years old. And I think a lot of first home buyers will flood into this market to capitalize on that. And like location wise, it's also still pretty good. You're not too far from the army barracks, from the hospital precinct. There's some good access into the CBD directly from the suburb as well. So the commute time actually isn't that bad. And historically, like Condon, for the most part, has just been more or less your middle class suburb. So it doesn't have the sort of same local stigma as Rasmussen as well as Kelso, which also I would say are very similar in terms of offer the sort of the same value for money or affordability in the Townsville marketplace. But I would say Condon is the one with, I would say, the better local stigma or the better local reputation. I think a lot of first home buyers would prefer to flock into Condon and get into these affordable properties here as opposed to maybe Kelso and Rasmussen. So we can see here that right now, like the market is looking pretty good as well. Supply is low, demand is high. Stock level sitting at 0.2 with roughly around 8 listings. Those brick homes, like the listing velocity is pretty low as well. So when they do become available, you have to jump on them very quickly. But I would try and get my hands on those ones before they even come to market, which is what we are doing. So I would try and forge a relationship with a lot of these agents and try and get some of these deals before they become available, because there's not a lot of supply, unfortunately. And as you can see, that demand is pretty strong as well, with roughly around 1,000 clicks per opportunity that comes online. The median sits at around 624,000. And as I said, you could buy a really decent brick home between 600,000 to 700,000. The upper quartile of the marketplace probably sits at around 700 plus, but majority of the buying right now for like your generic 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom brick homes sit between sort of 600,000 and 700,000. But again, they're going very fast, so you got to jump on them pretty quick. The growth rate over the last 12 months, it's pumping. It's done 29%. But I think this property market will continue to surge because of that element of affordability for a lot of those first home buyers. I think we'll push into there because they can't afford to get into Bushland Beach, Bowley Plains, because the same house, if you pick that up from Condon and put it into those other suburbs, you're looking at sort of 800, 750,000 now. And unfortunately, yep, that's not that affordable for even those coming to the marketplace with 5%. And yeah, I'm anticipating this market to do double digits, I think, going forward as well. Dwellings, you're looking at roughly around 3,200 dwellings. It's a pretty big suburb. It is flanked by some land, I suppose. So there might be some, I suppose, supply in the future, but I don't know what's earmarked around that part of town as of yet. I know a lot of the development is happening around Cosgrove, around Bushland Beach, around Jensen, even parts of Dirrigan, but not so much around this corridor. But just be mindful of looking at the supply pipeline if you are to buy here. Days on market, things are selling within 9 days. There was a property that I bought on the market recently for a client, and yeah, the day it went on the market, I literally had an offer to the agent that afternoon with really good terms and a really good price. Check it out. Number, what was it? I think it was 4 or 6 Shoveler Court in Condon. Yeah, we bought that for our investor client from Sydney. But again, we had to operate in a very competitive environment and had to really try and get that one tied down before the first open home, and we managed to do that, which was very good. And that one's renting for, I think, what, $580, $600 per week as well. So the rents there can definitely be better than that median if you buy the right dwelling. And the vacancy rate sitting at 0.3%. So very low supply as well. So I really like Condon in comparison to Kelso and Rasmussen because it has a lot more of a condensed rental supply as well and a lot less social housing. So yeah, I think a lot of first home buyers are going to really gravitate towards Condon because of that affordability, the nice brick homes. The local stigma is better in this part of town, and still Condon, you can get in the CBD relatively fast. You can get to the barracks, you can get to the hospitals. So yeah, it'll be a very popular one, I believe. Okay, the lucky last suburb is a suburb called Gordonvale, which is located in Cairns, far north Queensland. Now, Gordonvale, you're looking at about sort of 20-minute commute from the Cairns CBD. Previously, it wasn't a 20-minute commute; it used to be more like an hour. But there's been a lot of upgrades to the roads coming in from the Gordonvale precinct or suburb, and it's allowed residents from Gordonvale to Edmund to get into the CBD relatively fast now. And this has really propped up that suburb as well with this infrastructure investment. It's made access really good, and it's become a very popular location as a result of that for a lot of first home buyers. But at the same time, Gordonvale, it wasn't a suburb that was also flood affected as part of the recent flood events in Cairns. It was a suburb that's been rather high and dry. So as a result of sort of the upgrades to roads, the nature of the suburb it being not a flood prone area, I think it's really benefited off that. And I've seen a lot of first home buyers really push into Gordonvale because of those two reasons. But the other reasons are also that it's an affordable market, and again, you can get your hands on properties that are less than 30 years old, brick and tile on 600 square meters, between $600,000 and $700,000 right now. And in comparison to, so let's say, other suburbs located, let's say on the Cairns inner north or northern beaches, those similar properties, similar build type, build year, build quality, you'd be paying like $700,000, $800,000, $900,000. So the best part of $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 more for the same type of property. So a lot of first home buyers and property buyers have pushed into Gordonvale because of that affordability. Now, Gordonvale is an interesting suburb as well. I almost see it as like another Redlynch of Cairns. I really do believe it will become the hub of I suppose, the Cairns South corridor. As Cairns is expanding, the only way it can go is south, unfortunately, through Mount Peter, through Gordonvale, through parts of Babinda, down the track. I'm looking at sort of a 10, 15, 20-year horizon. So Gordonvale will be, I would say, the main services hub for that South Cairns corridor, similar to how Redlynch is sort of the services hub, or Smithfield, for that sort of inner northern beaches of Cairns. And I can see Gordonvale certainly doing the same. And I think Gordonvale has a lot more family friendly amenity. I would say some good schools, better lifestyle than like Edmonton, and also a better local reputation than Edmonton. So like it was sort of a two horse race when I looked at Cairns and I looked at Gordonvale and I looked at Edmonton. But I think a lot of first home buyers are going to gravitate more towards Gordonvale as opposed to Edmonton, because Edmonton, I still think, has still a high concentration of lower socioeconomic demographic, as well as a lot of public housing, whereas Gordonvale has a lot less of that. Gordonvale historically was more or less a baby boomer town, like had a lot of golden oldies there. And over the sort of the last 10 years, we've seen a lot of new construction happen in Gordonvale. So a lot of first home buyers have sort of flooded in, and it's changed the marketplace from more or less boomers to more middle class families, first home buyers. And I think that trend's going to continue after October 1st. I think the first home buyers will continue to flood into Gordonvale and really prop this market up as well. And I think if you can get into this market sooner rather than later, I think you're going to be while an investor laughing all the way to the bank, I think you're going to make some serious coin here. I do think Gordonvale will become like the next Redlynch, and if you look at brick and tile homes now in Redlynch on 600 square meters, like most of those houses, like they're 800,000 plus now. And so I think Gordonvale has a lot of wiggle room in this median to even push up into that sort of price bracket as well going forward. But again, it also has a big supply pipeline, so just be mindful of that also. Obviously, with the supply pipeline comes additional competition, so just be mindful of that if you are looking to potentially buy here. But all the point in time data for Gordonvale right now is looking really good as well. Supply levels are really low, sitting well below 1%, 0.1, which is extremely low. Looking at about 8 listings overall, very high unique views per property, clicks online, well and truly above the regional Queensland average here. And this ranks, I think, in the top 3 for Cairns when I looked at the data. So a very popular suburb right now for eyeballs. The median sits at 650, and as I said, plenty of wiggle room for that to keep growing. It's done 11% over the last 12 months, so it hasn't been huge numbers like some of the other ones we've looked at, but I think that's also a good thing because that allows you to come in and potentially buy with still a lot of wiggle room there and a lot of upside, as opposed to missing out on a lot of that growth that's happened in many of the other suburbs we covered off on. Rents are looking at about $600 per week as the median. And like similar to Mackay, rents are really high and a premium in Cairns at the moment. So plenty of properties in and around Gordonvale renting for like $700, $750 as well. But again, you've got to target those really nicer pockets and those nicer builds. You're looking at about 3,400 dwellings, so a pretty big suburb. And again, I think it's got the capacity to get even bigger. And yeah, it's an exciting phase of growth. I think that Gordonvale will go through over sort of the next 10 years, where we're going to see that dwelling amount, I think, triple, I think, sort of over the next sort of 10 to 15 years. Days on market sitting at 19 days, so things are flying off the shelf. Be careful of that and operate with caution, and obviously be diligent in what you're doing there. And the vacancy rates are really low, sitting at 0.2%. So point in time data for Gordonvale looking very good, and a market, I think, with a lot of upside, and first home buyers will come flocking into this market to capitalize on those affordable brick homes, because there's way more, I suppose, better public amenity, better lifestyle drivers, a better community and suburb makeup than the likes of, I think, Edmonton, which is where there could be also a contingent of first home buyers flocking in there, but I think Gordonvale will outperform. Well, thanks for tuning in, guys. I really hope that was valuable for you, and I hope that's given you a scent to follow, I suppose, in terms of where you could potentially invest right now in regional Queensland. And yeah, I do believe these suburbs are going to really pop off. And my rationale around these brick homes and newer brick homes, I think a lot of first home buyers are going to gravitate towards those properties because they're the most solid. They require the least amount of maintenance, and they offer kind of like the best value for money for what you could get in the marketplace. Like a lot of these first home buyers, yes, could go into some of the more, I would say, blue chip suburbs and buy 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom weatherboard homes or Queenslanders or cottages. But I think the properties that are brick and tile will be the ones most would gravitate towards, and they'd be willing to trade location or suburb for a better quality dwelling. And that's a trend we've seen over the last couple of years in regional Queensland. I think it's going to continue after October 1st. So yeah, guys, I hope that's been helpful. Again, my name is Troy Bassini, owner and head of research of Life Buyers Agency. We operate on the ground in regional Queensland, so we're very abreast to what's going on in all of these marketplaces. And again, if you are someone that potentially needs help in buying an investment property in one of these markets and you want to mitigate your risk and maximize your investment upside, give us a call on that number or visit us on one of those websites. Book in a call with me or my team, and we can establish if you need a hand and if we can potentially help you get into the marketplace here. But thanks for tuning in, guys, and I'll see you on the next video.